this idea of petro yuan, it definitely, to me, it definitely feels like it's linked to this idea of yuan internationalization and so on, and that often pops up on headlines once in a while. But I thought China was making a lot of course, engagement and expanding in international trade. But you're saying it will take decades.
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is in terms of trading the renminbi in yuan, it is ultimately going to be dependent on the exporters or the sellers' willingness to accept yuan as payment. And I think in terms of China versus and Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf exporters, that is an obstacle they need to address. And this is something that will take quite a bit of time, just because renminbi itself is not a widely used currency for trade and international finance. So accumulating a petro-yuan inflow is going to cause extra costs as well as currency risks for the sellers. And this is something that will take significant time to deal with.
Before we move forward, I want to just sort of take you back here and ask you, what really inspired you to come up with this report and look in this angle?
Well, we heard a lot of discussion about renminbi-based trade for oil, especially after President Xi Jinping's visit to Riyadh in December of 2022. And the talk and the reports that came out after those engagements following the meeting was a lot of talk about how the renminbi is going to enter the oil markets in a big way. And we kind of looked at the implications of that to try to assess the scale. And it turns out that the scale is quite limited. And we looked into why, and we came up with the singular cause, which is that there needs to be a way and a place for the countries that export oil to use the renminbi. And at this point, we realized that there was a full-on transformation between China and Saudi Arabia in their relationship, and that could provide more channels for that.
Yeah, and of course that Division 2030 in Saudi Arabia, maybe that could create some space for petro yuan as well.
Yes, I think the main point of the report is that we, for us as well as observers, probably need to think about the relationship between China and Saudi Arabia in a different way. We used to think of it much more in a singular issue basis, which is buying and selling of oil. But that relationship is no longer of that nature. It's much more multifaceted. It's full-on engagement. This is across finance, construction, as well as cultural ties. So, for example, Saudi Arabia last year required their middle schools to have at least one class of Mandarin for at least one semester, twice a week. So that's a cultural engagement. Aside from that, for example, of the foreign contractors that are active in Saudi Arabia, of the top 10, 6 of those are Chinese. So this is a changing relationship, and that has been transformed very rapidly since the visit.